Hello.
Hey,
To start off with, would you just like to say your name and where you are right now?
okay. My name is Jan Roubal. I'm from the Czech Republic, and right now I'm in my house in the countryside.
Okay. Well, these are just a few extra questions in addition to the other interview that you did before. This
Okay.
one is a little bit more about yourself. And I think the first question that I would start with is, who would you say you are as a human being? What would be some of your particular qualities, your values, your passions?
Okay. Okay. I would say I'm a free person. Freedom is a great value for me, and it has yeah, uh, it has some reasons in my family history, and yeah, so that's one point. And I would also say that as like getting older, I'm more and more aware of the spiritual aspect of our lives. So maybe these two things are really important to me. Yeah.
Mm. Do you want to say more about either of those or no?
No, no, maybe I would like to add something more. uh, because saying that, I'm realizing that I'm also connected um, more and more to the to the I don't know, to the place where I live now, to the ground, to um yeah, I really like working in the garden with clay, with stones, with wood, and it's yeah, that's important thing for me also, body and grounding on the spot. And maybe the other thing is that I feel really strongly connected to my family, to my wife and my three children and their relationships. So it's yeah. So maybe this I would say like freedom, spirituality, ground, and family could make some kind of a whole picture. Yeah.
Okay. Another question that I have is, what comes to mind for you as an event or as a set of circumstances that have shaped or influenced who you are right now?
Okay. Hmm. Hmm. I don't know. I think it's more kind of a sequence of events, and um, I think this all the sequence of events, it made me sensitive to minorities. I would say minorities in the society, but also minorities in the mind. The the things, issues that are neglected and that we turn away from them. And so I have a special, I would say, sensitivity to these issues, and I look back at them, yeah, in the society and in my mind too, in others' mind, I think too. So, and I think it's quite a lot connected with my family history also. My mother is Jewish, and I have yeah. So and mm, yeah, being Jewish in the middle of Europe was quite a dangerous adventure in the past, and yeah, with often with no happy ends. So the most of yeah, I think the most of my Jewish family like 2 generations back. They died during the Second World War, and some survived and escaped to Israel, and some survived here. And so I think this is one route for my sensitivity to minorities. And also I think that could be one reason for my passion for freedom, I would say. Yeah. And then I think the next important event was when I grew up in the Czech Republic, where in those times there was a communist regime here, where like everything was controlled by the state, and people were not free at all. And my parents were in the opposition against the regime, and my father was imprisoned for that. And so I was, yeah, it made me sensitive to minorities again. So
Minorities
that,
and freedom.
yes, again, yeah, the same issue. And so these were the minorities outside in the society. But then something really important happened in my history, what made me sensitive to the minorities of mind, I would say, the neglected things and neglected issues in mind. And it was that when I was 18, my father got really depressed, and it finished that he killed himself. So it was, of course, it was a terrible thing for me when I was 18. But I think it was a really important impulse for me to be careful about these neglected issues and the neglected things. I was lucky. I was happy to live to live in a free time where I could study, and I could develop kind of a lot of support for myself to go through this. And I had much better conditions than my father had, so I'm surviving much better. And I'm older than he ever was, which is a strange strange thought. So maybe then I'm thinking about another event that was important for me. It was when I started to work as a psychiatrist and psychotherapist in a psychiatric hospital. I worked a lot with people who were anxious and depressed, and after like 7 years working with them, I burned out, or I would say I got depressed myself. I got infected, in fact. And it was an important personal and professional turning point for me too. Kind of a personal transformation towards spiritual dimension, I would say, of life. And also professionally, it really impacted me very much, because I became curious why I got infected by depression when I had everything, all the support I could have. I had very, very nice family, small children, wonderful wife, a lot of friends and hobbies, but still somehow the depression, like my body got infected by it or something like that. Mm-hmm. So, and then it became kind of my research interest. How could this happen? Yeah, and it led me to research and psychotherapy research and like self-care of therapists. And it also pushed me to change my profession, to leave the psychiatric hospital and to start to work privately. And then I started to teach at the university, and I participate in the psychotherapy research center there. So it all started, I think a lot started from this moment, from the burned out. burnout. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and maybe the next moment, a really important one, I'm experiencing now, when I have, like 1 year ago, I've moved to a really lonely place in the countryside, where the nearest neighbor is like half a kilometer from us, and then there is no one. And I'm so happy here. It's strange, but somehow, because I meet a lot of people in my profession, and I have a lot of friends and colleagues, and somehow I feel that with this lonely place, I'm getting some balance, and uh, I think I really needed this. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Some distance from people.
Yes, and time for myself. And yeah, and as I said, I'm working a lot around, and I can really feel. I mean, physically, I can feel how I'm recovering from listening to the people who suffer.
Hmm.
I think that the style I'm working with people is quite dangerous. That I keep really open to the suffering, and I got yeah. mm, I think the suffering is present in the situation, and I don't protect consciously. I don't protect against that. So it's, in a way, I'm developing this approach that I uh, in a way I'm losing myself in this contact, and I'm letting myself be used by the situation,
Mm.
by the powers that are present, both the pathological powers, but also the healing powers. But this is but I realize more and more how dangerous this approach is. And so I really need this time here in the nature when I'm recovering. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm also wondering, in a relational sort of way, who would you say has influenced who you are? It could be someone from any of those particular circumstances, or someone else or other people in your life.
Well, there were many people. I was lucky to have many great teachers. I think I didn't find my guru yet, and I think I will not find one. I'm not looking for one anymore, and I think it was good that I found really great teachers, but none of them was like the teacher for me. So it pushed me to also to differentiate, to find my own way. But I don't know. It's difficult for me to name some, because there were really many. Some from my profession, some from other relationships. Maybe I would like, instead of naming particular people, I would like to mention particular activities that were really that taught me a lot. Yeah,
Mhm.
and it was there were I think there are three issues I would like to mention. First was when I some years ago started to learn snowboarding, and it was a great lesson for me. I don't know if you ever tried that. Have you?
I'm Canadian and I have never gone skiing or
No.
snowboarding.
Okay. Okay. You
I
missed
have
a
to
lot.
confess, I know.
Yeah. I don't like skiing so much. I like cross country skiing, but not the downhill skiing.
Hmm.
But snowboarding, it was really a lesson for me, because there you are, yeah, you're standing on a board, and your feet are tied together, so you can't, yeah, in fact, you can't save yourself.
Yeah.
And then you're on a steep slope, and you start to move. And what was so learning for me was that in the moment when I started to feel fear and tried to save myself, I moved back. In that moment, I was down on the ground immediately. Yeah, immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But when I gradually learned that when I start to feel fear there, I need to move to the fear forward.
Yes.
And then I started to move, and I was safe. And later it became joyful. So this principle that when I feel fear, trying to save myself just puts me down, and going into the fear,
Leaning into the fear.
yes, it saves me. Is kind of a principle that I practice in my psychotherapy work too.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one activity. The other was that I really like working with hands, and especially with wood and clay.
Mm-hmm.
I do quite a lot of ceramics, and working with clay was really important for me for learning of a good timing, that you really like work with the material, and for some time you really need to do just make it ready, and then you just follow what it needs, and you have some intention, but it changes during the work, and you have to put it aside for a while so that it's not so wet.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to be ready to really work on the right moment, because then it's too dry, and and it starts to break. And there are many things that I learned through my body working with the clay. And I also, in a way, I translate that into my psychotherapy work.
Yeah.
And the third teacher, it was snowboard, clay, and trees, I would say. I really love, I really love trees. Sometimes I think I love them more than people, I would say. And I really admire them. And the principle that they are on one spot, and they use the resources that are there on the spot, and from that they make the best they can, and they take the shape that's the best one for the conditions on the spot with the resources they have. It's wonderful. So I often imagine my clients as a tree. My client, what kind of a tree is this client? From what ground, from what conditions he grew up. And that's why this shape is so strange, because it's the best shape to survive on this spot.
The adaptation. Trees do move, though. They're just very subtle. They're very small, subtle.
Okay.
Movements.
Yes. This is what I'm learning from them too. Yes.
Okay. Interesting. So another question that comes up, and this, I know that it's very different whether this idea is even relevant in different parts and different societies in the world. So I will ask, and you can tell me whether it is or isn't relevant to you. It's how you understand yourself within your gender, how you understand yourself. I'm assuming, I don't know, as a man. what masculinity would be for you?
Yeah, definitely a man. Um, I like to call myself a feminist, mm, although I don't know much about what it means, but somehow it expresses my that I really value this is what I said about freedom. So I think that we are free people, men and women and other people, yeah, and the freedom is so important. So, and I want myself be free, and I also want others be free. Um, yeah, but being a man is it's important for me because I have two adult daughters, wonderful creatures. I love them, and I think it's really it's good for our relationship and also for them, for their future, that I'm like stable in my male father position or something like that. It's kind of a it's part of the family system. I mean, this is I'm married. I've been married for 25 years now, and I'm really happy with my wife, and we love each other, and I think this is part of the balance that and then also where I think I'm still growing as a man is with my son, who is now almost 16, and he's a wonderful young man, and we are like trying to find who we are as men to each other, and that's an adventure, exciting adventure. I like it.
Okay. Another one that comes up, it's sort of about a different set of power dynamics, is I don't know how you experience um, race and privilege issues
Mm-hmm.
in your life. I mean, you talk about minorities and
Yes,
Jewish background, but
yes,
how do
it's
you experience yourself within those dynamics?
yes. Hmm. Interesting. Well, as you mentioned, my life story and my family story made me sensitive to minorities, and I always find myself on the edge of the mainstream, I would say. I was in fact never mm, totally excluded, but I never was part of the mainstream. So, and that's the position I like, on the edge of the mainstream. Yeah, I can. This is where I can see the the minorities, and at the same time, I can, in a way, mm, stay in touch with the whole. Not to get polarized against someone. Yeah,
Mhm.
but so that's important for me. What came to my mind when you mentioned this question is that what I really feel is the presence of other beings, not only people, in on the earth. So it's not about races, but it's also about different kinds of creatures on the earth. And the, and this is quite painful sometimes to see how different creatures are suffering. And once I had an image that it would be really nice to have a parliament where all the creatures are presented equally to their numbers. So
Mm.
there will be there will be a lot of birds, and a lot
A lot
of
of insects.
fish, and yes, and very few people. Yeah, and then they would vote all for what's going to be here
This is the
on the
new world
earth.
order.
Yes.
Balance.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Hmm. So another question is getting back a bit into Gestalt therapy. I know you have different approaches, you have different tools, but from Gestalt in particular, I'm wondering what it has given you, how it has affected or changed you.
Well, I think the main advantage or privilege I have from the Gestalt therapy is that I have met wonderful people. That among my colleagues, they're really, yeah, I think they're very good people and my very good friends, and I wouldn't have met them if I was not in this particular psychotherapy approach. So this is what I value the most, I would say. And then I think I'm really grateful for uh, being psychotherapist and for studying for that. And I think it really changed a lot my life. That I went through psychotherapy trainings, different ones, and uh, I developed kind of a I would say self-compassionate attitude to myself, or yeah, something like that. It was really important for me. It was, I think it was a turning point. I mentioned my father in the beginning, so this is what life offered to me as a as an alternative. So I used it, and I'm really grateful for that. But I'm I'm not so sure if it is a Gestalt therapy as this approach. I think it's psychotherapy as a general. Mm, I have to say that as a yeah psycho as a kind of approach to life, kind of a reflective, responsible approach, which also brings joy from being here and now,
Mm-hmm.
really present. But I wouldn't ascribe that specifically to Gestalt therapy. Somehow it's not so important for me to distinguish between approaches. I think psychotherapy as a general discipline is a wonderful thing. And yeah, Gestalt therapy has some really important, nice values that I and it's the approach that came to me and that I'm learning it the most, but also I realize there are many other approaches and I'm learning from them too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, for me, Gestalt therapy is not the way of life. It's 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 a wonderful, very exciting way to do psychotherapy.
Okay, that's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. And I am curious, uh, maybe somehow related, not necessarily directly
Okay.
in
Okay.
Gestalt. What would be one of your highlight moments, one of your greatest experiences that has somehow been related to Gestalt, either as a practitioner, as a student, as a trainer, as a client of therapy?
Mm-hmm.
What would be one of those moments that stands out for you?
Yeah. Mm. Well, I remember some clients when I felt really so so happy that we could work together, and then I could see how their lives uh, got changed, but not only their personal lives, but also the kind of a transgenerational patterns that were there for maybe centuries, how they really struggled to change them. And they succeeded to some extent with my help. And this is really something amazing to like to be present in such situations. And then I also have this very nice feeling when I'm a kind of a real deep sense of meaningfulness when I'm teaching in the trainings, and I have my own I started my own Gestalt therapy training too, and I also am part of the integrative training, and I'm teaching in others, but the experience I'm talking about is the experience of the group, where I experience the people that they are really good people meeting together with, they are really honest, open, with good intentions, doing their best and collaborating. And it's such a power in the group with all these good people with good intentions. And in a way, I think if something like that is felt, we are changing the world in small. Yeah, we are. There is something different, and I'm happy that I initiated some of these projects. So it wouldn't be if I would not start that. And then
it activates something very different, brings out different aspects of the person than if they're walking by themselves down the street.
Yes, yes, yes. And I think that there's something created in the group of people, for example, in the Gestalt therapy training, that they take with themselves as a really core value, and then they spread it into the world, and they create another situations where they can share it with others. So these moments are really meaningful, and I think that's my contribution to the world, to the suffering world, I would say. Yeah.
And I was actually going to ask that, which is maybe a bit dark question, but I was going to see if you wanted to come back to the idea of suffering and burnout and
Yes.
the dark places that therapists
Yes.
go. And
well, the dark places, they are my world. So I'm not too much afraid of them, or I feel fear, but I go into that, as I told you about snowboard. So it's like, in fact, I'm starting to enjoy dark places. I'm trying to make it simple so that it takes me time. But more and more, I think that the work of psychotherapists is work on themselves. It's not so important what they do towards clients, but it's important how they treat themselves in the situation with the client. So that's one point. And the other point is that more important is what we do not do than what we do. So there are many impulses that, in a way, push us to do something with the client. And if we just realize that and breathe that out and don't act according to these impulses and just relax, stay free and grounded, then I think we can do almost anything. But the thing that we have transformed our way how we are with the client has changed the whole situation, and then the ground is changed and something new can grow as the tree. And so for me, more and more, really, the work of psychotherapist is to work with myself, um, with my own tendencies when I get into the dark places with the client. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. Must it make sense, or is it too
yeah,
general?
it does. I mean, it makes sense to me in this. It sounds like you're talking about qualities of being rather than doing.
Yes. Yes.
And it's learning how to be and to sustain.
Yes. Yes. And yeah, and the tendencies I'm talking about, they're mainly protective tendencies. So when I'm in a dark, a dangerous place, painful place with the client, I feel these tendencies to protect myself, to escape, or to be there as an expert, or to polarize myself towards the client. Yes, there are different tendencies that I feel, but if I don't act them out and just transform them into kind of a compassionate and curious presence, then I don't have to do anything else. That's enough, and it's a hard work at the same time.
It's interesting. I think that just when I hear you, I just imagine a person working with a plant, like in a garden, in a pot or whatever.
Yes. Yes.
And we don't have that bizarre impulse to do so much. We don't have to perform for the plant.
Exactly.
We don't have to act on the plant.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
It's bizarre how we get so lost in doing things with other people.
Yes.
And we forget to just be there.
Thank you for bringing this example. I really like it too, and it also helps me to imagine psychotherapy as taking care of the garden. It means like giving some support for the plants there, and just taking out some obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
But then what happens? What growth there? It's not my work. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I just hope that it grows.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, in these past few months, when so many of us have been locked in houses and with less movement, a lot of people have been paying a lot more attention to plants.
Yes.
We've noticed that they have cycles, that they're born, they grow, they die, they do beautiful things. And it's amazing how many people are commenting, and just in these interviews even, about being back in contact with Earth.
Yes.
It's
the same for me. Yes.
Yeah, it's an interesting gift from this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I haven't met a person among psychotherapists who would complain about the quarantine.
No.
No one.
No. No, that's true. Maybe we're a very strange bunch of introverts who needed more time at home alone. That's true. But it's also because I think most of us have learned to adapt and find ways to get the contact that we need. That's part of it. But yes. So I'm wondering, is there anything that you would like to add?
No. No, I think it was. I really enjoyed your questions and your presence, and I think it's a wonderful project that you're doing. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'd been wanting to have another conversation with you for a while, so it was nice to be able to meet. I appreciate your time. So we'll leave it here.
Yes, yes.
Great.
Bye
Thank you.
bye.